Okay, I'm Chris. I'm part of the Gaia Architects Group. We work mainly with architecture, and I do a lot of other things around sustainable development, teaching, writing, and live in Norway. I think a lot of people want to now, and I think there are a lot of reasons. One is that it's not easy to find the alternatives often, the green consumer solutions and so on. Another, I think, is a fear. They're built into sort of habits, and they're afraid that it'll mean a loss of freedom, a loss of quality of life, and so on. All this idea about less is more. I think a lot of people are afraid of that, and in fact, they don't really need to be. I don't think. In one sense, I don't mind too much. I don't really think that climate is the most important thing. I mean, I work all my time on that to try to, if you like, save the environment. But I don't think that's the essential question, because even if we do that, we're still going to be there with the more essential problem of what I think this seminar is mostly all about, which is more the questions of inner human development, maybe. When we've saved the planet, we'll still have that issue to deal with. Sort of everything and nothing. I mean, all things are frustrating, and I think one thing that does preoccupy me a lot is how bad our present economic structures are, the economic system as a whole. Maybe because it's the area I know least about, and I see how important it is. Within my field, I know that the solutions exist, and it's frustrating it doesn't happen more often. But on the other hand, one can't really save the world as such. You work in that direction, but I feel I'm working in a field which is motivating. I'm working normally together with good people. So in a way, I'm very happy at the same time. No, I don't think one can really pick out any. We've been talking a little bit about this, that we really need to work on all levels. And my impression has always been that it's every link in the chain. It's partly the knowledge, it's partly the technical indicator systems, it's partly the motivation, it's partly the politicians who are not courageous enough. You name it, almost everywhere. Yeah. Well, it sounds like a simple question, but it isn't. Again, on the first level, on the physical level, I think I can draw various visions of sustainable societies, buildings, maybe eco-communities, organic farms, that kind of thing. And I think that can be a mix of simple things and also some reasonably advanced stuff. But that's a physical description. On the more activities description, I don't see any reason why we should have to work more than a certain number of hours per day in productive work. But meaningful work is very important, that we should be active all the time. But that not so much of that time should be for this sort of income earning work, which strangely enough seems to get more and more, even though we've got all this technology. People working a lot more than they did 500 years ago or whatever. But then there's the inner side of which has really got to do with how we're relating both to ourselves and to people. And that's harder to describe, but I don't think that's any different now than it would have been 1,000 years ago in a way, that how one actually is working as a person. Well, that's really the basis of the whole thing. I think local community, we've got many identities from our individual up to our internet cyberspace identity, but I think the local community is still, as Local Agenda says, really the most important level, because that's where our concrete life is for most of our sort of normal activities. It's a concrete thing, a concrete world. We can have our cyberspace virtual things as well, and our individual one, but that something around local community, which is whatever, a sort of a region, a small region in some way, really important. Well, I wish our education system, our whole structures would focus more on those things. I think personally, me as an adult, with the grey hair and stuff, and I see how stupid I can be, for example, in personal conflicts or in marital conflicts. And there's some of that stuff, like conflict solving, which we should have been trained in a lot better, when we were at school or somewhere. That we just don't focus on that kind of thing in the way we bring people up. I think it's really important that we have concrete experience from something. I mean, whether it's being able to do mechanics on cars, or growing vegetables, or being a carpenter, or some trade which has to do with our hands. Because I feel a lot of understanding and experience. It may start in the head and it may connect to the heart, but it also should be learned through the hands in some way. And that gives us a confidence about standing in the world, about being in the world, which can't only be a kind of a spiritual thing, and it can't only be an intellectual thing. It's got to be, as long as we still have bodies, I think there's got to be that component. And with today's very intellectual, mostly city people, I think we're losing that concrete world to a huge degree. Well, I think they work to some extent, but they're working very slowly, and there are very many forces working against them as well. They're not really being applied very wholeheartedly by politicians. It's just a little bit more green taxes, a little bit more incentives to solar energy. It's not nearly enough. I think if they really were applied very thoroughly, it could make a lot more difference a lot quicker. But that's only part of the solution, to put it that way. I think there's a lot of experience around in good methods, whether it's sort of conflict solving, creative processes, participation. I think there's a lot of knowledge about that around. It's not very often applied. Motivation is usually part of quite a lot of these courses, but again, I think we're working a little bit uphill because in today's world, at least in our countries, particularly in an oil country like Norway, people are sitting very comfortably. There's no big push to motivate people in any other direction. Their software is very comfortable. If there's a crisis, it's much easier to move things along somehow. But methods on all levels are important. From the technical ones, the government systems, the sustainability indicators, right over to the very sort of personal development. I think all of those they're all important. I don't think the personal development alone and that kind of inner searching is enough, because you've also got to deal with the world. So I think you've also got to work on the methods and the systems and the structural problems of the world out there. And we can never be whole people unless we're dealing with both in a way. No, I fell into the sort of alternative world, if you like, in France by chance. Organic farming and renewable energies and all that stuff, and as well as the kind of spiritual changes, philosophies and stuff, and it was just a natural place to be. I couldn't really be anywhere else. I make enough money. I do quite a lot of work for free. I just couldn't be anywhere else, really.